Well, hi guys, today we are going to make some apples. I have a green apple and a red apple, and I have a couple of caramel apples here with their little sticks and their caramel. So shall we begin? One of the things that I like to do when I make fruit or any kind of food is I like to have an example of them on hand. So on my way to my work table, I picked up a couple of apples. We have a Granny Smith and we have a Fuji. These are both the favorite apples in our house. So you need to look at your apple, kind of get an idea what the color is and what the shape is and what the size is. And kind of get an idea of how does it fit in your hand, because that's going to be important here in a few minutes. So next we need to mix our clay. And to make apples, we need white clay and translucent clay. About 2 parts white to 1 part translucent, about. It's not exact. And then we need some yellow and a little tiny dab of green. You're saying, but that's not the color the apples are. We'll get to that. You need to condition those clays and get them mixed, and that's what I've done here. And you'll end up with this off-white, kind of a slightly greenish yellow color. And you need to roll it out. I get mine probably about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. And then cut off some slices, a little bit less than 1/4 inch in length. And you roll them. And you make a ball. Because these apples were both fairly round. Now, I'm going to use my knitting needle. This is just an inexpensive knitting needle. Lay my clay on the ball on the table. And it doesn't matter if you're doing a caramel apple or just an apple. You'll start out the same. Now remember how I put it in my hand? Here's my assistant. She is going to now check our size. I do this with a lot of food. Put it in her hand and yeah, that looks about the same. That's a good apple size. So I know I'm on the right track. So I roll a bunch of these balls, 1 ball for each apple. And I put a little divot in the top with the knitting needle. Don't go very far. You just want to make a nice space there, like the top of an apple. The first time I made apples, I made red apples. And I got out my red clay. I thought, okay, I'm making a red apple. I need red clay. I soon discovered that it didn't look right. They looked too heavy. They didn't have any life to them. Then I discovered this method. All right, let's do 4. So we'll roll it out. These circles don't have to be perfect because we're going to fiddle with them some more yet. And we put a hole in the top. Now we are going to color them. To make the color of the skin, we need chalk. To make the green apples, we need green chalk and yellow chalk. To make the red ones, I have 2 colors of red chalk and the yellow. And I just use my knife. I try not to use my clay knife to do this because then when I cut my clay I end up with chalk all over everything. And I just scrape it. Scrape a little bit. This is just one of those little inexpensive paint palettes that you can get at the craft store. They sell them by the paint. I think it costs less than $1. It's really, really handy. A little red and a little of the other red. Okay. Now this is where you want your wet wipes. Because once again, we are going to be messy. So wipe off the hands. Make sure we get all the color up. Now I like to work with about 2 at a time. And since I'm going to do 2 green and 2 red, that works. Now these brushes, I have 2 brushes. These are from the dollar store. You can tell I spend a lot of time at the dollar store. But this is an eyeshadow brush. And I find that these work so much better than trying to use a paintbrush because eyeshadow is powder, chalk is powder. it kind of goes together. So take a little yellow and just kind of rub on your apples. Now since we're doing I think this is my red brush. I guess we're doing a red apple first. The red ones, you don't need to cover the whole thing with yellow chalk, just a little bit. So there's a couple of red apples. Now lay down that brush, wipe our hand, get all that red chalk, as much as I can, off my hand. Pick up the other two apples, get another brush, again yellow, and because the green apples have a real yellow tinge to them, we want to make sure that we pretty much coat them in yellow. Now the green. And those are now coated. Now it's time for some stems and some sticks. So to make stems, I get out my fancy clay extruder. It's one of the ones with the crank on the top. These are so much better than the cheaper ones. It's well worth the extra money. Put some brown clay in it. I'm using the little plate with all the holes in it. And I just cut them off. Got a whole bunch of them. You get a bunch at a time. And then these are still pretty big. So I rolled them out till they were as thin as I thought I could get them. And I made them really skinny. And then I baked some. And these were just baked, I think we're baking at 270 today. They baked for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then I cut them up into short little pieces, and you'll need extras because these tend to escape while you're working. And just put them in that hole you left in the top of your apples. Remember how we made that hole in the top? That was so the stem would know where to go, just like on a real apple. Take another one. Let's do a green one here. We push that stem in. And that's all there is to putting stems in. Now, I'm going to use a dental pick. And I'm going to kind of round the bottom of these apples. I'm going to line a hole up pretty much directly, kind of imagine there's a line all the way through from the stem to the bottom. And put a little tiny hole. Just a little hole. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit of the same brown clay and push it down on my surface and scrape off just a tiny, tiny bit and put that in the hole on the bottom of our apple. We'll do the same thing with the green one. Got the stem in it. You're kind of rounding back out. Make our imaginary line through the apple. Now looking at the bottom, little tiny bit of clay. And you're just leaving a small little bit. You just want to make that little end at the bottom. Now, our two for the caramel apples. For these, I took a flat toothpick and I split it lengthwise with my craft knife and I cut off little tiny pieces. Where's the other one? And again, we're going to pick them up with the tweezers. And these go into our apples. Now for caramel apples, we need a flat bottom. So kind of push them down on the tile. And don't worry about baking the wood, it's fine. There. Now, these are ready to go in the oven. And when I'm baking most foods, including the apples at this stage, I actually bake on a paper plate. It's not going to come in contact with the element. The oven is cool enough to be safe. But when you bake on a tile or on metal, you get a shiny bottom on your item. This way you don't get a shiny bottom. Especially important on those apples that are not going to have, that are not going to be caramel apples. So we're going to bake these at 270 degrees for about 5 minutes. Up to 10 if you think your apples are a little bigger. And let them cool so you can work with them. And that's what I have in this container. I have a whole bunch I made earlier. Now, all of the apples, we're going to get out a paintbrush and we're going to use our Sculpey satin glaze, and all of our apples will get a coat of satin glaze. So, if all you want to make is regular apples, you're all done. If you want to make some caramel apples, be sure to check out part 2 of this video for how to put the caramel onto the caramel apples. Thanks for watching. Bye.